yeah, I'm not a behind the table person, so I'm going to stand, try to engage with you guys. Actually, there's 4 of you. I am coming and shaking your hand. Hey, how's it going? I am so glad you guys are here. So, I am super excited to have this Geek Wellness panel. I'm Esther Edwards, and I work here at the library. And I just want to say thank you, because thank you. So I'm Esther Edwards. I work here at the library. I love this job. I'm so excited for this Geek Wellness panel that we have today. I want to do just kind of say that you guys are all welcome here. We can let our geek flags fly, but we also don't have to prove our geekiness. Have you ever been to Culpeper Con, like a con, where you had to prove how geeky you were? That's not this space. You belong here no matter what. So we're glad you're here. I want to do a couple shout outs. I want to know what our fandoms, what genres of geekiness we have here. We have a variety between the 3 of us. So I know, do we have any Dungeons and Dragon fans here? Woo! Yes, yes we do. So that's awesome. Do we have any horror fans here today?
Just me.
Yeah, no, we got a couple here. So my core loves are some manga and anime. I'm brand new to the party though. So I just discovered that I love anime and manga like 4 months ago, but I can't stop reading it and can't stop watching it. So that's why I'm like, you don't have to prove our geekiness. You can just love what you love. But I'm also a huge Star Wars fan and a huge Harry Potter fan. So any Star Wars fans? Because born and raised Star Wars fan. So
Come on, the Acolyte looks pretty good, right?
So
pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
So yeah, so some shout outs. Now, favorite fandoms, since there's so few of us, shout out some of your favorite fandoms. What's that I didn't mention? Maybe we have D&D, and we have horror, and we have Star Wars. Yes, what's your favorite fandom?
Strong female comic characters. So
Absolutely.
Diana Prince and the strong female characters in particular, kind of all genres, but I really like the regular identity of them. So I love Wonder Woman, but I really love Diana Prince. Do you know what I mean? So I like their regular, like their non-alter ego. But yeah, strong female superheroes.
Oh yeah, that's a theme in mine. Anything I like has a strong female lead somewhere. Anything I like. Anybody else? Any other fandoms that we want to do a shout out for?
Science fiction.
Woo! Science fiction. Any other fandoms? Any other ones that we haven't mentioned? Everything. Go Geeks.
You didn't mention LARPing and modern fantasy.
Modern fantasy and LARPing. Yes, we have a LARPing demonstration later today, so that'll be awesome. All right, so we're going to start off with our origin stories of the panel up here. I have my degrees in psych and marriage and family therapy, but I now work here at the library, which I love. You know my fandoms, but my origin story about Star Wars was I was about 3 weeks old when my parents took me and my older brothers to go see Star Wars. And that's, as they say, the rest is history. And I just checked off a geek bucket list just earlier this month. I got to fly the Millennium Falcon at Disney Hollywood Studios. It was amazing. It was so awesome. I had so much fun. I get giddy thinking about it. So, Craig, will you tell us a little bit about your origin story?
Sure. I am Craig Simmons. I'm an LPC, licensed professional counselor here in Virginia. My origin story, I guess, is I'm a kid of the 80s, and so, you know, Voltron, Transformers, GoBots, even, all of those things. Yeah, all of those things kind of got me into really loving just kind of, and I was a latchkey kid, so I was reading all the time, a lot of fantasy stuff, a lot of things like that. So I was always by myself, and I was a big geek. You know, I was played on the football team, and we went to I remember this story because it stuck in my head as like, oh, I am different. We all went to 7-Eleven, and the coach was like, it's raining, we got a delay. Everybody grabbed something, so everybody's grabbing candies and hot dogs and stuff, and I grab a Spider-Man comic book. And everybody's like, why are you reading? I'm like, why are you not? so for me, I was like, okay, I'm a little bit different, but that's okay. I like it. And now, now being a geek is kind of cool. And so I try to introduce some of that geekiness into my work with young people as well as with adults, because I feel like it can be helpful in kind of bridging gaps.
Awesome.
My turn. I'm David Lane. I am president of Geek Wellness Education. And much like the old hair commercial said, I'm not just the president, I'm also a customer, a client. And I don't have the degree. What I have is a lifetime of depression and anxiety that eventually came to a point, and actually there's if you're into sci-fi, there's a really good movie called Starfish that no one's ever heard of that really inspired me to start my mental health journey. And when I was in therapy, and it kind of hit me of, what kept me alive all those years was I can't miss Endgame. I mean, because if I shuffle off this mortal coil now, I'm never going to know how they beat Thanos. So I realized what an important role this geeky stuff plays in our lives, and how it helps really to give us strength and encourage us. So I started a nonprofit, and here we are. So let's talk about some geeky stuff.
Awesome. So my first question was going to be, what was one of the biggest benefits of mental and emotional health that you get from being a geek? And you kind of hit on that, but did you want to hit on a little bit more of like, what is...
To me, I think, and to go a slightly different direction is, do we know what a found family is? When you have a group of people who are marginalized or, not part of a crowd, or not part, maybe, they don't have a lot of friends or whatever. I think that being a geek, being a dork, can bring us all together. We're all here right now. A bunch of people that don't know each other. Out there's a whole bunch of people, and that probably have never met, or in some cases have never met. And the great thing about this community is we all love something. If we all love Dungeons and Dragons, well, now you got a group of people to play with, and people to talk about, you like science fiction, I could sit down, we could have a 3-hour, listen, Dune 2, come on, right? And so I think that having these shared interests, especially when you consider how much of the geek community is marginalized. When I was growing up, Avengers wasn't the biggest movie in the world. So, it was, he's a teenager reading comic books. So, at the time it wasn't cool. So, us bunch of losers gathered together and found friendships, and it helped us through. And I think that, now it's the geek space is so welcoming for folks who are LGBT, people who are maybe trying to come to terms with their identity, and they join this community and they go, oh, wow, it's a bunch of cool people like me. Let's have fun. And I think that, to me, that's the important thing, is finding a fellowship of people that you can get through life with. But go ahead.
Yeah, a sense of belonging, that found family, correct. So for me, when I was thinking about this question, life can be so hard and it can be so heavy, sometimes. And the biggest mental and emotional benefit I have found, there's lots of them, was, I'm going to quote the Lord of the Rings movie, lighten the load, and escape. It just brought me happiness that was undiluted. My relationships with others brings me happiness, and things what brings me happiness, but they're messy, they're complicated. My fandoms, pure joy. right? Nothing all that complicated and messy about it. And to use the more like psychological word, it helped me balance out the negativity bias. So our brains automatically search for the negative, and it does that to keep us safe and to keep us, out of trouble and things like that. But it can get our minds weigh negative things 3 times more than positive things. So this fandom that's undiluted joy for me helps me to balance that out, helps with my depression that I suffered with for years and years and years, decades. And everything. It provided that healthy escape. The world didn't feel so heavy. Right now, I have a Grogu sticker on my driver's side of my door to remind me, hey, there's still joy in this life all the time. Yeah, there's still hardships. Yeah, it can really suck, but life can. But there's still joy. So let's balance out that negativity bias.
So you guys stole my answers, but that's okay. Because I was going to talk about belonging, because I think belonging is a huge part of it. I work at a school, and I'm the faculty support person for our D&D club. And just going into that space with those kids, and this is a college prep school where everybody's super preppy and like, the khaki shorts that cut off picture in the middle of your, you know what I'm talking about. So it's like, these kids don't fit that profile. And when I go in there, it's just joy, right? They go in, like we were playing, D&D wasn't happening yesterday just because, like, I think a couple of kids had sports or something. And so they were just playing this game where you organize things, right? And it was just like, it's this computer game. You just organize these books and you organize these. And they were just like having so much fun about, well, that's not a gradient. And why would you, if you have it done this way? And it was just like the joy of just being around other people who think like you or even think slightly differently than you, where you can have these conversations and it doesn't have to devolve into some type of like, well, I hate you. It's more, yeah, we can joke about this and we can be together around this. I think also for me personally, I was introduced to D&D in college, and it really kind of did create an environment where I could just kind of be goofy and be myself and not feel like I was a sidekick a lot of times. Growing up as an only kid and as a latchkey kid with a single mom, I was a lot of times just by myself. And so when I was with other people, I always felt like I was kind of a sidekick to other people and their things. And so when I was, I'm D&D and I'm playing D&D and my character right now is the focal point, right? And I don't have to be a sidekick. I can make my own decisions. I can do these things. And so for me, it kind of created some autonomy as well, just kind of diving into that space.
Awesome. So I wanted to, this is kind of a personal thing, so I was like, hey, guys, kind of join me on this personal question. So I have 2 kids who are both into horror, but that's not my genre. I actually have a condition called sensory processing sensitivity, and a lot of people with that condition get overstimulated, overwhelmed, get flooded with violence. Violence isn't really my issue, it's the scary. It's the scary horror. So I get overstimulated, overwhelmed, and flooded with it. But I have these 2 kids who love horror, and I was wanting to, pick David's brain about what are the mental, emotional benefits? How can I support my 2 kids when it's not really very supportive of me and my mental health, but I want to support my kids, and because I've realized one thing with my son. So I'll share this one aspect I found about my son. So he was 5 or 6 when he started wanting to like dress up as Michael Myers, Ghostface, like these bloody, gory zombies and goblins and things like that. And I was kind of like, you're really young. You're really young for this. And so I was kind of pushing back. But the more I observed, I realized that he was owning his fear. Like that was how he engaged with what made him scared. He's a little kid in this scary world, and he loved to color pictures of these horror characters, Chucky, you know, you name it. He loved to color pictures, own the action figures, have costumes. And I was like, you know what? That is so healthy. That is so cool. I'm here for this. I'm here for this. Even if I have a hard time with horror, I'm here for that. Because when we bury our shame, bury our embarrassment, bury our fears and our anger, it festers in the dark. But when we own it and we talk about it and we're dressing up and we're coloring and we're playing with the action figures and things like that, we're owning it and we're bringing it into the light, those feelings can't fester. They can only grow into healthy things like that. So that was the one thing, and I was like, what is more? There's got to be more.
A little backstory. Before Geek Wellness Education existed, and I had been going through the help, which I'll have forever, and right before this, I'd started to volunteer for other organizations and helping them, and I would suggest, hey, you know, we ought to go to horror conventions and talk to people, and we ought to go to Comic-Cons and chat. And it was right around that time that the co-creator of Child's Play, John LaFia, committed suicide. And he wrote Child's Play, directed Child's Play 2, and I went to these organizations and I said, hey, you know, we really ought to take this opportunity to talk to horror fans about mental health and suicide awareness. And the response I got was, well, I mean, that crowd is so dark and creepy, and it's just not really what we want. And don't horror movies just make you weird and dark and creepy? And it's like, no. We're dark already, and that's why we seek out horror movies. Basically what it is you're watching this trauma unfold from the safety of your house or the safety of a movie theater surrounded by people. So you're able to engage with the final girl or you know, the kid in Child's Play that's playing with the doll, or and Andy, and you're able to engage with that, see their trauma unfold, but then when it's over, I made it. You know, I got through it, and so it's a really, hey, come on in and join us.
Yes, come in.
We need some superheroes in here. So it's a really good way of confronting trauma without actually confronting it, especially if someone is, which a lot of horror people in the horror community are, they're not getting professional help. So it's kind of a way of faking their way to mental health help, in that they can experience the trauma in a safe environment, survive it, and then there's that, you know, I made it through, I got through the undead slasher killer, which is, let's face it, we all have dealt with our own undead slasher killers in our lives. And
Keep coming back.
yeah, and what we've even found, we did a documentary called Haunt Therapy a year or so ago, where we talked to scare actors in haunt places, you know, mazes and all that. And what we found talking to them was, well, first of all, they're all going through issues. And this is the one thing that they do where they're able to feel empowered, because they're able to put on a costume, put on a mask, and scare people. And a lot of those people that work those jobs, that if you've ever been to a haunted house, a lot of them have social anxiety. A lot of them are very shy. And yet, they're chasing you through a hallway with a fake chainsaw, you know. And so even the act of scaring others can help them increase their self-esteem for that bit while they're at work, and then it tends to influence even the rest of the night. So yeah, that's That's basically, I think, the important thing people should know is the horror doesn't make us dark and weird. We're already dark and weird, so we find a release in that horror. So I think that would be the takeaway.
Thank you. So I just needed that extra boost to be like, I'm here to support that and my children, my friends. I have friends who are totally into horror, and it helps to have that understanding. Like you said, so I'm not just like, oh, that's dark and creepy. Why are you even engaging with that? But I totally understand it. And that made me think about the question I was going to have for you, Craig, about using Dungeons and Dragons therapeutically, which I think is also amazing, with using any of our geekiness therapeutically for health and for wellness. As I was thinking about that, kind of like so in my background, my pet project was actually using books and therapy, bibliotherapy. And one of the reasons why I loved books and therapy, well, there was a couple of reasons. One, trying to find a fictional character that matched my client. It's so powerful to see someone that's like you, right? In popular culture. I think that's what we love about pop culture, our geekiness, or anything like that. But and secondly, it makes it a little bit removed. I'm not focusing on my depression. I'm focusing on this character's depression, this character's trauma, and things like that. Again, it lightens that load a little bit. And so when I was thinking about Dungeons and Dragons, if you're healing somebody as an elf as a healer in Dungeons and Dragons or something, or if you're healing yourself, maybe that can go into real life and healing yourself or something like that. So do you have more to tell us about, I want to know more what that looks like, that therapeutic Dungeons and Dragons D&D.
Well, it can look a lot of different ways. I've used it for social skills. I worked in a program where I was working with young adults with neurological differences, so autism, ADHD, high anxiety, those types of things. And so one summer I was like, you know what, I want to change up social skills. I don't want to just like stand up here and talk in front of you guys or make you do little like practice role plays. Let's actually like do a role-playing game where you pretend to be somebody else for a little while and you can speak with an accent if you want to. So you're not being yourself, but you're still practicing those skills that you need on a day-to-day basis to kind of interact with people and kind of talk, have conversation and learn how to like read the nuances of what's going on. And we can actually pause, like this is great because now we can pause and talk about, well, what did you think this person meant by that, right? Instead of like making an assumption and then jumping to conclusions and going further and further off track, like D&D can go sometimes. We can pull it back and say, all right, hold on, let's pause, right? And we can even rewind it. And I've actually done this with my kids. Like I've started playing with them and my son can be a little awkward. And so we had an interaction where I was like, all right, you know, you walk into the gym and the kid says, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he says something off the wall and the kid like looks at him and he says, oh, and he freaks out. And I'm like, all right, pause. Like, this isn't real life. Let's rewind it. Let's start over. How could you have approached that differently? So in terms of teaching social skills, that's one way of doing it. Another way with the therapeutic pieces is also helping people to step into their strength. Like I was talking about my own personal journey of walking out from being a sidekick to trying to be the main character. We can help kids or adults walk into their purpose a little bit and understanding, all right, this is who if I could build my perfect self, right? This is what I would look like. This is how I would be. This is the way I would approach situations. All right, so in your real life, you might have issues approaching a situation that way. So let's build in some situations where you're having to approach those things in the therapeutic space where we can talk through it and walk through it and have you challenge yourself at doing something that you might not do in the real world. And one of the great things I love about it too is like I said, I'm able to. I'm the faculty supporter for our youth at school. They get to run their own games there, right? And so taking that autonomy of planning and building and kind of creating their own world and walking their peers through it. I was talking to one of our dungeon masters yesterday. I was like, so have your players figured out the plot yet? He's like, well, I kind of have to write my plot down so that they can, like, yeah, that would be helpful. So, well, thankfully, such and such takes great notes. I was like, yeah, that's good. and you want to make sure that you're leading them through it. I have a client now that I'm working with, and he struggles with his relationship with his dad, where he feels like dad knows everything. And dad recently said, "Hey, can you run me through a game? I really would love to play D&D." And I was like, this gives you an opportunity to teach your dad something, right? You get to put the role reversal on, and you get to see that your dad is fallible. He's a human being too. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can use it, a lot of different ways where it can be, we can play with it. And I have a client now who struggles with just kind of like making plans and just following through at things and saying, all right, so if you were building a character and you're like increasing your XP, how much XP would you put into these particular areas? Or if you're doing that, why are you putting in those areas? So let's look at the day as like, you have 10 XP per day. Where are you going to put that XP to make sure that your character is building up the right strengths throughout the day? So, yeah.
That's amazing. That is so awesome. Did you guys have anything else before we see if they have any questions that you wanted to?
If I could add on to that, if you're my age, growing up, if you were playing Dungeons and Dragons, many times there was a whole panic about that thing nationally, where oh, it's evil, it's going to destroy your kids. No, this was actually where kids were getting together and learning skills and forming friendships. It turns out that whole panic thing was doing more damage than the good that they thought they were doing. So let's not do that anymore. Also, to expand on that, I'll include LARPing and cosplay as well. If you have, like thinking about who the perfect you would be, or who you are aiming to become. Okay, well, maybe you're really shy and socially awkward. Put on a Deadpool costume. Because then you're not there, Deadpool is. And you can go out there and crack the jokes, and really be something that you're not, and you're learning those skills. We see that in LARPing, when they become a character, let's say they haven't come out as LGBT plus publicly. Well, their character can be proudly LGBT plus. And what we see is when they adopt those aspects, after the game is over, or after the cosplay, after the LARPing is over, there is that period where you maintain that energy. And so cosplay, D&D, LARPing, lightning bolt. I get it. But this can actually help people find who they really are and find ways to express who they really are. To me, I think it's really wonderful that this is hit the mainstream in a way, so that those of us who are dorks can have more opportunities like this awesome opportunity at CulpeperCon to share who we are and meet new people. So take that, Mom.
Wasting your life. The safety of these kind of places, right? The Dungeons and Dragons, or Culpeper Cons, Comic Cons, and the other groups that we can find, and the consequences not being so real life, not so heavy. If you do make a mistake, and being able to just be like, oh, let's go back. I love that. I love that so much. Do you guys have any questions for us? Or we'd love to hear your experiences. We know you have experiences too. So
I have a question.
he's coming. Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask
you
it?
ask them a question. He's going to bring the microphone for
Are
you guys.
those meant to be Boba Fett shoes? They remind me of it so much. I looked at it, I was like, oh, it looks like Boba Fett. I wonder if he did that intentionally. They're so rad. Okay. From Thundercats?
From He-Man.
Oh, yeah. From He-Man? Oh, that's
Puma did a crossover with Masters of the Universe, so they're Battle Cat shoes.
Oh, that is rad.
Do they have shoe ones? They don't yet. But Usually they usually do like
That's a fandom I did not mention.
spin it into the other stuff, so it might be better the next time around.
So,
If you see me in passing and you've seen them, just literally walk I was a random person, He-Man shoes, the She-Ras are out.
so Puma had a line of He-Man shoes. All right.
They've done several. They've done Thundercats, He-Man, G.I. Joe.
Oh, wow. So Puma can go ahead and cut that marketing check to Culpeper County? Is that how? Okay.
Right. It's for the recording.
Okay. I have a question that kind of ties in. I have a question that kind of ties into a couple of the things, and I don't know if you'll have an answer for it or not, but it'll be interesting to see. You were saying this is a safe space. We don't have to prove our geekiness. And I am on board with everything you guys were saying about taking on the character and becoming empowerment. And like, I might be quiet in real life, but I can be Deadpool here. So I think one of the reasons my fandom is the alter ego thing, especially with powerful women, is that I'm kind of fascinated by how you take the going into the alter ego and putting on your superhero cape and then turning it into your day-to-day life. So in other words, not having two distinct characters in your head, daytime me, fandom me, or Dungeons and Dragons me, or cosplay me. So do you have any tips for people to how to basically take that empowerment and take that characterization, your cosplay, your Dungeons and Dragons skill set, but then I think one of the things that's hard is how do you take that back to your daily life? Like, I feel like sometimes that's a step that's most challenging. Hopefully that made sense. And that's why I was like, I don't know if you have an answer for that because that's kind of a big world question.
How do we go from alter ego or split personality?
Split personality. How do you
and
funnel
be a
it into
cohesive
one
whole?
person?
Oh, be a
Because
cohesive whole.
I
Yeah.
think that's something I've always been fascinated with. And as I get older in life, I will admit I'm an older person who's into this stuff. I'm challenging myself to take those things that when I was younger, I cosplayed this. So why? How did that represent me? And how do I bring that into my day-to-day when I'm not in costume, when I'm not in character? So in other words, does that make sense? My question. Okay, I'll stop talking. I don't know if you have an answer.
Yeah, do you guys have any ideas?
I know for me, I've always been a shy person myself. I've always been like this a few years ago would have like freaked me out sitting in front of people talking like this. But I've realized it's something that I've had to kind of build within myself. And I think part of what you're talking about is parts, right? So we all have different parts of ourselves, and we have different shadow pieces of ourselves, and we have to figure out how do we bring all of that together and meld it into like who I want to be, right? One of the things I started doing was I would wear a superhero shirt every Friday. Like when it was Dress Down Friday, I would start wearing superhero shirts. So people recognize me as, oh, you're the guy that wears superhero shirts. And so I would have conversations about that that geeky part of me. It was something that previously I wouldn't really talk about, you know? And then at some point I started saying, I fly my geek flag high, right? I'd like would literally say that at work. And in my office at school, when the kids come in, I have pillows with, you know, Batman and Captain America. People get on me because it's like, it's two different, it's whatever. They both need therapy. So they're on my couch. So they're on my couch. Right? I have I did cosplay as Black Panther, so I have a Black Panther helmet on my bookshelf. And so the kids can come in and talk about those things and see that it's okay to be these different pieces. One of the things I talk to my students about a lot, I get to teach our freshmen mental health, right? And so I talk about identity, right? And identity is really this really difficult piece, especially in middle school, early high school, going into adulthood. I'm 45, I'm still working on it. Figuring out who you are and figuring out how do we filter instead of masking, right? Where do we find that? How do we stop wearing a mask and trying to be what other people want us to be? And I'm going to filter a little bit. You can't get all of me because you can't take all of me, maybe.
And not
but
everybody deserves all of you.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Boundaries are healthy.
I'm sure any
I
of us
wanna-
deserve all of
So-
them. I mean,
Well,
we
and-
can't take that much awesomeness, okay?
It's a lot.
But yeah, I did want to put that in because
Yeah.
I had felt like that one
Mhm.
time. Like kind of almost the other extreme. I was two different people.
Right.
And then I went the other extreme where I gave
just
everything,
everything, yeah.
everybody everything of me. And that's
It's
not a
too
healthy
much,
place
right.
either. So yeah.
So finding where the filters are, like when do I filter and what do I filter out? You can still see me. This is still me being authentic, right? But I'm not gonna. I can't give you everything because you don't deserve it, or B, you're just not ready for it, right? So I'm gonna give you what I feel like makes sense. So yeah, so I think that's kind of how I think about it and how I try to present it to young people when I'm talking to them is like, we want to filter, right? I'm a geek, and when I stand up in front of my class, I talk to the kids about geeky stuff. Like when I talk about family systems, I show a genogram of Star Wars.
That's
Say,
awesome. I want to see that.
Look how messed up this family
right?
is.
And generational trauma, it's all here, right? It happens, it occurs, right? And so, but then I can talk about, I'll say, well, this is Friends, and let's look at their genogram, right? And let's look at Ross and Ross Geller and their family and how that's messed up too. And so we talk about different aspects of it without necessarily like ever hiding anything. Like I think if we can walk through authentically without feeling like we have to hide, I think that's a really important thing. But that's just my take on it.
I would suggest baby steps too.
Mhm.
So when I was trying to integrate all sides of me, right? So last night I dressed up for cosplay and people mentioned my blue mascara a lot. And I was like, I actually wear blue mascara all the time. This is not cosplay because the blue mascara was a small way to remind me I like blue and I'm going to wear blue mascara to remind myself to be authentic to myself. That's why I do it. I'm wearing my Millennium Falcon earrings today because it seriously was such a cool thing to fly the Millennium Falcon. They're small. Nobody's ever has commented on them when I wear them. But to me, I'm being myself without being like, we can be loud and proud, but you don't have to be loud and proud. Like you don't have to be. So like just like these little things that can. So I'm doing this in my normal life. I'm doing it at work. Just like Craig was saying, I was first a little bit embarrassed to put like Grogu's bumper sticker out so prominently on my door, but I'm like, no, I need that reminder of that undiluted joy. I can do these little things to try to be a whole person, an integrated whole person. So.
I'm a little bit different in that even though I had crippling anxiety, for some reason I dealt with that by being the class clown and always being the loudest person in the room. And of course, I am completely out front with mine. On my wrist tattooed is a semicolon, which is a symbol for mental health. The author could have chosen to stop the sentence, but chose to continue. And I have altered it up a little bit by making the dot Captain America's shield. So often when I'm just out and about and I meet people, they'll look down and they instantly will know two things about me. One, I'm a survivor of mental health trauma, and also I'm a dork. So I am encouraging that kind of thing. Now, as far as how to integrate that more into your life, I think what some people do is they imagine conversations with their heroes of if I was going to talk to, you said Diana Prince. Sure. I mean, you said strong women. Yeah. Maybe not Jean Grey. We know what Jean Grey would do. Destroy a planet. Or Scarlet Witch. But yeah, imagine a conversation of, how would Diana, how would Wonder Woman guide me in this situation? What would be their advice? What would they do? And the answer is snap Max Lord's neck. But aside from violence, I think that you can look to your heroes as inspiration of, you know, I look up to them for a reason. I love these characters, and they help define my life for a reason. What can I get out of them? So, like I said, you know, kind of imagine that conversation and say, okay, well, just like with again, I'm going to name drop them again because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's called Starfish. Virginia Gardner is great in it. Shout out to Virginia. And with that movie and I know no one in this room has probably seen the movie, but it's about a girl whose friend dies. She goes over to her house after the funeral to kind of be with her friend's stuff and feed her animals. And when she wakes up, the world has been taken over by interdimensional beings. And kind of the subtext of the movie there is, do I deserve to venture out of this house, take on the dangerous world around me, and redefine the world? Because she has potentially the ability to change the world. So, you know, to me, it's, you know, watching a movie like that and saying, well, you know, I mean, I really want her to have the confidence in herself to overcome her trauma, overcome her fears, and face the interdimensional monsters that are out there. It's not a far step to then go, and I have monsters I have to face too. So, you know, using that as inspiration for your own battles. So, yeah, that's what I would do is watch more sci-fi and superheroes. So, yeah.
All right. Did that help there? Answer your question. So, any other questions or any other? Yeah, come on up to the microphone.
You keep getting passed over. I'm so sorry. I see you out there.
Sorry. So I just wanted to know, asking for myself and honestly for the young ones in my life that are 10 and 7, how do you go and, like, if nobody in your family and nobody in your day-to-day life is a geek and nobody understands what you're going through, like with anxiety, with depression, with wanting to cosplay, how do you just do it? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the fact that you're here in your civilian identity. Your secret identity is showing. Now, okay, I'm sorry. Who are you now? But yeah, you want to take that?
Well, I have a 10-year-old niece, and she is really the only one. She's kind of gotten me more into it, but she just feels like alone. And she has friends at school that feel the same way, but in our family, nobody understands. So I just don't really know how to be there for her.
We happen to have one right here.
Well, one of the great things about the day and age we live in, although being 10, I can understand a lot of trauma can come through the internet and on those groups and things that they might not be quite ready for. But there's also the belonging and the sense of found family. You can find your tribe on the internet because it does bring it out so much more. But as a young child, and maybe you have some ideas since you work with children like that, like as the aunt, so since you're the aunt, just supporting them in their interests and asking them. So many kids in their lives, the adults in their lives, their close ones, they say to them, come out of your room and join me in what I want to do. Yeah. But so few go and say, hey, can I join you in your room and what you want to do? Tell me about it. If that's how, as an aunt, that's how you can totally support your niece, is approach them and be like, I don't know anything about this, and you show me, and the confidence that will give, the self-confidence, and that will give your niece, it will, it just will be an amazing relationship, and you'll probably become one of their favorite people.
Yeah, and that's what I do. So thank you for letting me know that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, be the cool aunt. right?
Yeah.
Like I can talk to you about anything. Yes, you can talk to me about anything, right? And so that grows, and that grows as she grows, like where she can feel like she has somebody, she has her person, right? One of the most important things for any person and children in particular is to have a person, one person who is not a parent, who that they can trust and love, who they know loves them before them, and not because they're their parent and they have to. It's like, oh, you don't have to be here, even though you're mine. You don't have to be here. You want to be around me. You want to do these things that I'm doing, and that's really cool. So yeah, be the cool aunt. And the found family piece, help her to find those spaces. I know our library in Chesterfield, they had a D&D club for middle schoolers, and so I didn't get my kids into it, but I should have. But they had a D&D club, so looking for those types of opportunities for her to be able to do those things. My friend behind you there, he actually ran a D&D program, or a D&D kids zone at GalaxyCon last week in Richmond. So it was like you bring your kids, find the kids zones at those places and see what's going on there. Take them so they can be around other kids like them, and they're like, oh my gosh, there are other kids like me. Take those friends at school that she has and say, hey, do you want to bring a couple of friends and go and do something? Let's go to see a movie, or let's just have a movie at my house so we can just watch, some of the Marvel, like have a Marvel movie marathon. So she feels, hey, there's not only my aunt, but also my friends are a part of this too. Just be the cool aunt. That's what I say.
And you wanted to contribute.
I just want to say, like, also, sometimes she has to make her own space.
Yeah.
And so the best place to do that is at school. If she has friends who feel the same way, I would suggest approaching a teacher who she thinks might be, supportive of that and saying, hey, can we start like an after-school club? So about 10 years ago, I had a little boy in 6th grade who came up to me and he said, hey, Mr. Adams, I know you like kind of video games and stuff. Can we start an after-school club? And I hate you so much.
Go ahead and start from the beginning. I'm just kidding. Joking.
So
After-school club.
this kid came up to me and he said, hey, Mr. Adams, can we start an after-school club? And I said, I guess, sure. I was young and full of energy then. And so we started this club, and we called it the Scruffy Nerd Herd. And I was like, no one's going to join this. It's going to be me and him and like 5 other kids. And that is not what happened. What happened is now 10 years later, we have the largest club in the school. We have over 100 kids who join every year. I've now had to expand to 3 classrooms. We own like 18 TVs and every gaming system available. Like, it just spiraled from one little boy who said, hey, can we start a gaming can we start just a nerd club? And I was like, sure. So there's a lot of teachers who are looking for that opportunity. I don't know that I would have ever done it if he hadn't come up and said, hey, can we start this? Because you just as a teacher, you have so many other things going on that you're not thinking, hey, let me add one more thing to my plate. But if she went up to a teacher and said, I'd really like to start this, I've already got some kids who would like to be involved, it picks up way faster than you think it would. And we've now become, the counseling department at our school uses us as a tier 1 intervention for basically every IEP meeting that a Nerd Herd application is given out. We are there for attendance. Anytime there's attendance issues, they give the parents that application, because then that's 1 day a week that they're going to come to school, right? Like, that starts small, that first step. And so it has spiraled into a much, much bigger thing. It started with one kid asking, can we do this? So if she was that one kid, she could create her own,
That's a fantastic
legacy and family. And I mean, it gets pretty big pretty quick.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so yes, I think this will be our last question for today that we have time for, but I'm glad you got to ask it.
Yeah, we have a few minutes. We'll blow the 8.
I agree with everything that you've said about how for the vast majority of us, a little bit of fantasy is very healthy. But every so often you run into that one person who takes it a little too seriously, can't tell fantasy from reality. So as mental health professionals, what are the warning signs to look for that maybe this particular friend doesn't need to be pretending to be a vampire?
Go for it, mental health professionals.
That's kind of hard.
Yeah, I would say if
So-
it's starting to, so we have what's called the DSM, and we have this big book of all these different diagnoses and things like that. And part of what happens and part of what it talks about is duration and how much it interferes with daily life, right? So if it's going on where it's past a couple of weeks, a month or so, and it's starting to interfere with daily life where they aren't able to take care of themselves, or they're not doing the basic things that they need to do in order to actually be a living human being in life, then yeah, that's a problem. And at that point, what does that intervention looks like? It depends on the person. It depends on your relationship with them. Do you approach them and just say, hey, I'm just a little worried and concerned? Or do you say, all right, we need to figure out, do I need to reach out to a professional to get help for this person? And so really it depends on how long has it been going on? What is the intensity of it? So it's intensity and duration, essentially. How long has it been going on, and how intense is it where it's impacting their daily life and their ability to function? And if it's interfering with those things and it's going on for a long time, then yeah, at some point you as a friend may have to try to approach them if you can, if you think it's going to work. If not, maybe talking to family and figuring out how do we get some professional intervention to come in and assist with this. So that would be my.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, that was great. Sometimes with intensity and duration, they also say frequency, like how frequent does this intense or duration. The only other thing though, sometimes and I think everything is always a balance, right? I mean, and we never find it. That's elusive. But is that our lives, we tend to think it's like the straight line, but healing goes up and down, and the intensity, like maybe they need to be really intense and durate through this for a little while. Maybe that's a healthy thing for this time, and then when they get on the other side of this, they've gone through it and they're back up on the upswing, so just remembering that healing isn't the straight line all the way up. It goes up and down and all around and everything like that. We circle back. But yeah, I think that's really good though, because it's kind of easier to, is it happening all the time? Is it very intense? Is the duration long? Those would be the red flags.
And
Yeah.
especially if it's interfering with their daily life.
Yeah.
Like if they're not able to function like in the way they're not going to work, they're not taking care of themselves, they're not doing those basic things, that is when it becomes a real issue, and we need to really like look into that as being something that we need to deal with.
So I was going to say, I actually have experienced this very thing. My son is adopted. He had a very traumatic life before me, prior to me. And so when I adopted him, he came to live with me. We were kind of cool with everything. He was kind of a nerd. I was a nerd. He introduced me to Dragon Ball. I, introduced him to things, took him to cons. We did all this. And then I started to notice that whenever he took a new obsession, his focus was anime, he would obsess on things, and he would get very focused on them. And I was like, okay, I've seen that at school and dealt with that and everything. But then it got to the point where it was like, hey, I want to legally change my name to this character's name. And the first time I was like, okay, well, you have to change your name anyway, sure, why not, we can do that. And then like a couple of months later, we had switched to a new anime, and then we wanted to do it again. And then I started noticing things like, he would be like, I hate the color orange. And then 2 months later, orange is my favorite color because of this character's war. Like, it started to become this whole process. And so I did go out, and we were already he'd been seeing a counselor since he was like 12, he was 14. We did go out and we talked to people and we got some testing done and things, and they said, well, it's very, very likely he's a borderline personality disorder. And so he's trying to compensate for his feeling of lacking personality by absorbing other personalities, by taking on these other personalities. And so as much as I didn't want to, but I also had to put brakes on things. So like, he would come to me and say, I want to change my name. And I'd be like, no, sir, we were not going to do that. When you turn 18, if you want to change your name, we can. Again, because you've already changed it like twice. Like, this is expensive, it's a lot of paperwork, every time I have to get you a new birth certificate, that's a nightmare. Like, it's just, the government, we can't, you just gotta, like, if you wanna change your nickname, go right ahead. Your friends can call you anything you want, and he's had like 47 nicknames. Like, you can go by whatever identity you'd like, but I'm gonna call you Lars, and that's gonna, you know, and that's the thing. And then if he changed his mind about colors or foods or things that were swings way out of nowhere, I'd just be like, all right. But I did put some breaks and some parameters, and so I was
Some
supportive in some
Boundaries,
ways,
yeah.
but in other ways I started to establish boundaries and sort of try to force him in, like not force him, but like make him aware of, like, dude, this is not okay. Like, it's
And
not
as a
okay
parent,
swinging.
as a parent, that makes it, you have that, you can put those parameters and boundaries on. If it's a friend, it's slightly different because you don't have the ability to kind of like, you can put your own personal boundaries around what you will accept from that person as well, like what you are willing to say, yes, okay, I can do that for you, or I can call you that, or whatever, and then you can put boundaries and say, that's a little uncomfortable for me, so I'm not going to do that. But you should be clear and be kind with it, right? We can put boundaries in place and be kind at the same time. It doesn't have to be
I
me.
was going to say, but as he got older, started to, as he was with me and we kind of built a life, he started to, I think, put his own pieces in,
Together,
and then stop feeling the need for that crutch of, I don't know who I am, let me just be this person.
Do you think it helps? So if you are if this is someone you love, someone, I don't mean romantically, but somebody who you have, you want to support.
I want to be clear. I do love Gal Gadot romantically.
Well, and the thing is that I use love in the sense of
I don't know
a
who
loving
anybody who
community,
doesn't.
people who support each other,
Right.
not necessarily your spouse. Is my point in saying that. I think sometimes one of the things I ask myself, and you can tell me whether you think this is helpful or not helpful. I'm open to criticism.
Feedback.
How is it feedback? How is it helping that person, and why might they need it? So that's like what I would say.
Yeah.
If it's somebody that's not in your nuclear family, and so you maybe aren't responsible for them, but there's someone who's in your community, and you want to support them, and they're really going down a rabbit hole. Instead of saying like, how do we get them out? The flip side of that, in my head, you guys can tell me if this is
What do
right or
they
wrong,
need?
is how is this helping them? What do they need, or what is wrong? And then see if you can support that to help them out of the rabbit hole.
No,
If
I-
that kind of helps.
How is this helping them, and can we find maybe a healthy
Healthier
alternative
way,
Yeah. Or
that
what
still
do they
meets that
need?
need?
Yeah, meet the need, find
If,
out why.
if that's something that needs to be,
Like
I
if
think
it's-
that's a great question to
if
at
it's
least ask
coming
yourself,
from-
right?
Yeah,
So,
if it's coming from a mental health situation, like obsessive compulsive disorder, and they're just down a rabbit hole. Okay, how can we approach that need or that support that they're not getting?
The other side is you don't want to be part of the problem. Like,
This is
Right.
If I know my
I was
friend's
gonna
an
continue,
alcoholic,
but
I'm not
Yeah,
invited to the
stop.
cider fest. If I know my friend struggles with the concept of fantasy versus reality, maybe I don't need to invite him to my role playing. Because I don't want to be part of the problem.
right. So, I think boundaries has come up quite a bit, and it's like the boundaries you set with your son. I could just see like that's made a sense of safety, because with the borderline, with it just being like there are no borders, you created borders for him, and that sense of safety, even though it was hard, it was hard to be like, I wanted to support you in all your interests, but the sense of safety for yourself, but your boundaries for yourself also help provide sense of safety for your friends, your family members, and things like that. They know they're safe with you because of that.
Sorry, just because I can think right off the top of my head that of cosplayers that are in the community that we're in, who do have, who end up kind of becoming, thinking that they're a part of the character or that sort of thing, becoming a little too wrapped up in the fiction and believing it's reality. So to wrap up this whole thing, if someone that is in the community is going through that issue, or if they're feeling suicidal thoughts or whatever, what are some things that you would do that we could do to maybe either support or not support the fantasy, or and get them towards the help they need.
So something with suicide, usually we all, even a trained therapist, we get a little bit scared and we don't want to talk about it. That's actually like the
opposite.
anti-helpful. Talk about it. Talking about suicide will not create someone to go and do suicide. Actually talking about it, usually, again, like I said earlier, the more we put in the dark, it festers. The more we bring it into the light, it blooms or it goes away or anything like that. So talk about it, being like, hey, you can talk about it with me. And is the frequency, intensity, and the duration that Craig spoke earlier, those are really good guidelines. How often are they thinking suicidal thoughts? How intense is it? What's the duration of it? Do they have an actual plan? When it comes down to like immediate, I grab a piece of paper, right? I will not take my life today, now, without contacting somebody and have them sign it. There's something very powerful about making them sign a simple contract like that. So that's something you can do like in the immediacy. Anybody can do that for a friend or a family. You don't have to be a mental health therapist to help them stay on just a little bit longer and to get help.
Cool.
So I don't know, anything else to add with that?
Just when you're asked a question, actually ask the question, are you thinking about killing yourself? Don't just say, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Because people don't consider suicide as hurting themselves.
Are you okay?
It ends the pain. Right?
Don't ask the
so
question.
you actually
direct.
ask the question, are you thinking about killing yourself? So, and like Esther was saying, it hopefully oftentimes will start a conversation and then offer support. Hey, well, I'm here and I'm going to be here with you. You don't need to talk to me if you don't need to, but want to, but we can just be here and then offer some suggestions about 988 is suicide prevention hotline. You can call that, or just offer, hey, let's find a therapist for you. Let's work together. Psychology Today. You can go on there and help them to find somebody to go talk to.
So we're all ready to be superheroes, right? We need to talk. We need to talk to our friends directly about their issues and help get them into the help we need. Cool.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Go be a geek. Go be well.
Thanks, y'all. And thanks, Internet. Thanks, Internet.
Hi, family.
Hi. Technology.